Okay, so with the puja just now, sincerely feel the vibes of the puja. And even though we may be chanting something that's written down, let us feel it and sincerely mean it, because this is important for meditation. Meditation is a practice of the mind, habituating the mind to something wholesome. And we place the mind on an object, a simple object, something neutral. So we shall do it on the body. So many of you are meditators. So we won't start from the beginning. Let us close our eyes and sit upright. Stabilize the body. Okay. Those on the chairs, you can put your feet flat on the floor, and your hands, you can clasp one another or just place them on your laps. And those who are sitting on the floor, sit at your usual posture, but let us keep the back upright, but not stiff, but confident and upright. Let us begin with the body. Place the mind on our scalp at the top of our head and just feel the raw sensations. Even without using our fingers to touch the skin and the hair, we can feel perhaps the softness, the tone, the hardness of the skull, perhaps even some tiny vibrations. So those are really the four elements of all material phenomenon. But we shall not analyze it today. We shall just feel the raw sensation. And just feel it around the skull. And feel especially the softness and the flowing nature, so that it helps us to release the tension. So feel the flowing of the muscles down our scalp to our forehead, especially the areas between the eyebrows, because sometimes they cringe without ourselves realizing. So release the tension between the eyebrows, feeling the muscles flowing around the eyes, allowing the eyeballs to rest in the eye sockets, releasing all the posturing, the tension in the eye sockets. And at the sides of the head, at the temples, let the muscles flow and release the tension. Similarly, at the back of our head, flowing down to the rest of the head, the cheeks, the jaws, and down to the neck. As the muscles release the tension, the neck bones reposition and adjust itself naturally, slightly curved, not crouching and not stiffening, just flowing naturally down to our shoulders as if the muscles are melting, like the snow in the snow-capped mountains in summertime, melting and flowing down our shoulders, down our arms to our elbows, allowing the arms to relax and gravitate naturally by their own weights. All the tensions at the shoulders released, and both arms just hang at the side, flowing down the forearms to the wrists and the hands, feeling the sensations as we go along our anatomy, all the way to the fingertips, as if the muscles are dropping and falling off the tips of the fingers, dripping. And feel our chest, the muscles in front and at the back, releasing the tension, liberating the rib cage and the lungs within, as they breathe naturally by its own reflex, There is no controller, no participant, no judge, just a student. The mind of a meditator is a student forever, learning, observing lessons from nature. And when the muscles are relaxed, the mind is humbled, learning, breathing. And as the muscles flow down to our abdomen and the back of our bodies, all the organs settled within, like cushions and pillows stacked one on top of the other in the closet, resting silently, quietly, anchored at the base of the abdomen, the center of one's gravity, weighing the whole body down onto our seats, anchored, plastered, steadied, still. As the muscles flow around our buttocks, the thighs, the knees, and the calves, all the way to the floor, melting, flowing. Perhaps we may even visualize our skeleton seated quietly. And if we should see our skeleton, do know that we are all but skeletons clothed in muscles and skin, and then clothing and everything else. Nothing special, just skeleton in muscles and skin. And a mind peaceful and calm, beautiful. And that is what matters. So feel the mind at the base of our hearts, like water. When all the winds and breezes have stopped, the water settles, becomes a mirror, like a still forest pool, reflecting without controlling, without judging, without participating, just faithfully reflecting the passing birds and the clouds of the objects of the mind. And given enough time, even the sediments will settle to the base and the mind becomes pure, brilliant, penetrative. So may the body be calm and the mind be peaceful. Just keep the mind either on the body or the mind for a while, open to all possibilities. Keep the mind humble, respectful, like a child, always learning. At our own time, we may open our eyes. Okay, good morning, everyone, and happy to see all of you. So today I'm sharing something related to my profession, but it's also a request from the president of BDMS, something about caregiving uh, from a Buddhist perspective. So I craft the title as this: Caring for others as I care for myself, the Buddhist caregiver. Yeah. So I am quite certain that many of you know about Buddhist teachings. So if I were to give a talk about how, the Buddhist teachings and then related to caregiving, can become a bit boring. So I am going to touch on the academic, the professional aspect of caregiving first. And then I will bring in some of Buddha's teachings that we could use to apply. Because most of us, when we are caregiving, we separate it from our spiritual practice. I mean, it is natural. When you are working and getting things done, managing multiple tasks, you have to focus on the results. I mean, it's natural. You want to see results. So when you're doing that, sometimes we may forget that actually the Dhamma is very applicable. So today I'm trying to link the two. Okay, how in our day-to-day caregiving, actually the Dhamma has a lot of teachings for us. If you remember them, the caregiving can become an enriching experience. So this talk is just a reminder. Maybe the academic part is something new to you. Yeah. So I will try to answer the question, how does Dhamma help us in caring for the frail, the sick, and the dying loved ones? And I would craft this talk in three parts. So the Dhamma help us by helping us managing carer stress. Okay. It also helps us by giving us some principles on how do we care for another person, and also how can caregiving become a growth and development opportunity. So this is that. So first of all, I'm not sure how many of you are caregivers. Some of you are caregiver, but you don't really realize that you're a caregiver. You just think that I'm just a daughter, I'm just a son, I'm just a wife, I'm just a husband. This is very typical. So there was a research in UK a few years ago that a lot of caregivers only realize that they're caregivers 2 years after caregiving. And many of us in Singapore, when we are caregivers, we don't feel it that way as well. So because of that, we may not seek help. We just feel that this is what a son or daughter should do, and then we get stressed without knowing that it could have been better, right? So I'm going to define caregiving. Then I like you to reflect, are you a caregiver? Okay, so what's a caregiver? This is from Singapore's Agency for Integrated Care. Um, a caregiver is a person who has taken on the responsibility of looking after someone who is unable to care for himself or herself fully due to illness, frailty, disability, or a mental health problem. This person could be a family member, a partner, a relative, a friend, or a neighbor. Okay. So it's different from someone who cannot take care of himself or herself due to the fact that he's still a child. Okay, so parenting is not considered caregiving. Okay, so caregiving is somebody who is not able to take care of themselves because of illness, disability, mental health, or frailty. And also, caregiver is somebody who taking upon themselves the responsibility. Okay, so may I have a show of hand? How many here are caregivers or have been caregivers before? Okay. Okay. Now, currently, presently, caregiver. Ah, not many. Okay. Mm, okay. Then the next section may not be so useful. But let's do this. Actually, I did this with Ministry of Health last time, and it was quite useful. Um, the, are there people online? No, nobody online now. Okay. Maybe we play like this. recall the time when you were a caregiver, because those who have been caregiver, there are more of you, right? And those who are not caregivers, you visualize a friend or a relative who is currently caregiving and put yourselves in her shoes. And then I want you to answer 4 questions. So this is the Caregiver Wellbeing Index. Can you please use your handphone, scan this QR code, and then answer 4 questions. Actually, 5 questions. These are 4 questions. Then the 5th question is for you to add up the scores. So we know some of you are current caregivers, some of you were caregiver before, and some of you know someone who is a caregiver. And according to, I think it was President Reagan's wife, Nancy Reagan, who says that all of us are either current caregiver, past caregiver, or future caregiver. So, yeah, so it's good for us to have some appreciation of caregiving. So take some time to finish the 5 questions on Google Form, and then we will see the results after a while. Okay. Once I see your face, I think that you have done, then we will open the results together. Your current experience, your past experience, or your empathy of somebody who is experiencing caregiving. Perhaps your mom is currently taking care of your dad, or that your sister is currently taking care of your mom or the brother, her parent-in-law. Then we can just put ourselves in their shoes, and then we can just do that. It's just an exercise, so it's an imagination. Let's look at the result. I will stop share and then show the result. Okay. There are 12 responses. Okay. So the worst score is the yellow one. So 25% last 3 days felt little interest or pleasure in things. And then so currently we have 12 responses. Okay. Then how often do you feel anxious daily? 1/3. Felt sad or depressed, about 1/4. And overwhelmed. Yeah, so we have more now. So the important one is the 5th one, add up the scores. So we don't have anyone that's 0. About 1/3 is good, 1/3 is fair, and about 1/3 is poor. Okay. So let's see how do we interpret this result? This is a very new caregiver measure instrument. Yeah, not sharing it. Hold on, I stop share and share again. Some time to share. It's sharing of. Okay, participants can now see that in Zoom they can see, but here you can't see. Okay. So this is how we interpret the result. So this research paper is fresh off the press. I think it was published in 2020, okay, by the Interi research group. And yeah, so those who are, so you can look at the top one. If you're poor, you're likely to be, if this caregiver experience poor sense of well-being, they are more likely to be making some kind of financial trade-off than the other group. That means financially strained. Or they're more likely to feel not able to continue at least one day in the last 3 days and feels pain every day in the last 3 days or feeling lonely in the last 3 days. And then at the bottom, if you're excellent, you're likely to feel valued and respected by others, and you manage stresses in your life well, and you feel good about yourself, and you're hopeful about your future. So if you have excellent score, this caregiver is actually having very good well-being. So caregiver sometimes do not feel stressed. Sometimes they feel good about caregiver. So this particular instrument can measure the feeling good also, because if you have excellent or good, this caregiver is actually is doing quite well. Many of us, 1/3 of us are feeling good. Okay. 1/3 are feeling poor. So if you're poor, higher chance of having stress and lower chance of feeling good. Okay. So this is just a gauge. So for yourself, those of you who are current caregiver, you will know your own score. Okay, I'm not going to ask you, but then you can actually gauge yourself. If you are poor or fair, then maybe it is good for you to talk to someone. Okay. If you're excellent and good, you're doing well. Keep at it. Your positioning of the mind is probably right. Okay. So okay, now I'd like to talk about managing carer stress first. So what is stress? All of us have experienced it, but the academic would define it as this, that stress is a feeling of emotional and physical tension or physical tension. It can come from any event or thought that makes us feel frustrated, angry, or nervous. And caregiver stress is very common. So this is a study done in 2017, published in 2017 by the National Council of Social Service. They studied the caregivers of people with disability on the quality of life, and they found that nearly half of caregivers of persons with disabilities experience poor mental health. Persons with disabilities include people with intellectual disabilities. And many of them may have special needs, such as severe form of autistic spectrum disorder, and or anxiety. So intellectual disabilities, but also physical disabilities. Physical disabilities, if it is just something related to spinal cord and all that, you can rehabilitate the person to become quite independent. But if it's related to if there's a component of intellectual disability, then it can be really stressful. But disability also can include people not born with disability, but develop disability as they age, like stroke, like dementia. Okay. Also, 4 in 10 reported being psychologically distressed, and 6 in 10 feeling burdened. Okay, so you can see the proportion of people who are stressed is actually quite high. So how do we process stress? This is a very seminal work by Professor Leonard Perlin, who is a social work professor. He developed this caregiver stress process model using dementia caregivers, and become a very important framework that generated a few other frameworks. Because if you want to support caregivers, you need to understand how does it work? How does the stress happen? The dependent origination of stress. So he developed this model in very early in the 1990s. So it's like this: when you're stressed, when a person is stressed, they will use their social resources and their own emotional resilience to manage it. If they manage successfully, they become stronger. The mental health becomes stronger. If they don't manage successfully, the mental health takes a beating. Okay, so external social resources include family, friends, and And personal resources, emotional resilience, but also financial resources, also their physical health. So these are all the mediators. But what are the causes of stress? It is the primary stressor because we're studying caregiving. We need to understand the caregiving related stressor. What is the problem with this care recipient? Is it dementia? Is it schizophrenia, depression, mental health? Is it disability, intellectual disability, special needs, no, autism spectrum disorder, severe ADHD? Or is it physical disability, spinal cord issue, stroke problem, fracture, road traffic accident, brain injury? So what is the what is the source of the stress? Different kinds of disability pose different challenge. Also, disease condition, heart failure, you need to restrict the fluid, restrict the salt, diabetes, oh, many things. Diabetes with kidney problem, a lot of issues. Protein restriction, salt restriction, water restriction, carbohydrate restriction, calorie restriction. And then there'll be a lot of mood issues. So it depends on the condition. This can be quite stressful, but it is more than that. From my own experience, caregivers, many of them are stressed not because of the caregiving, it's the family judgment, family disunity. Sometimes it is their own needs, like they feel guilty about not spending enough time with their children or their own husband or wife or their work, and then the demand from all over the place. So it strains from other roles. Intrapsychic strains is also common when the caregiver feel like, when I was a kid, my mom always doted on the boys, and now the girls have to do caregiving, or that everybody got married, no time. I'm the one who is not married. I have to take care of the mother or the father, and and they only come once a month, and then they just eat. I have to even cook for them to eat. Maybe they thought coming to eat is support, but they need more than that. So nobody understands them. And they go out with their friends, but their friends are not caregivers. So the friends don't understand the need of a caregiver. And so these are the intrapsychic traits. Also, all of us are very complex. Some of us, we envision a middle-aged life where we actually go for retreats, travel with friends, but because of caregiving, cannot go for retreats, cannot travel. And then we have to sacrifice. But when we sacrifice, people don't know. Nobody say, wow, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Nobody say that. So it's really quite misunderstood and very lonely. So these are the intrapsychic strain. So cause the stress. So when we're stressed, we try to use external resources, and then we try to use internal resources. We try to use Dhamma to teach. Mindful, 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 but you cannot be mindful, okay? Very hard. And then your mental health become worse or get better. But there's also another thing, which is the social economic background. Living in Singapore is different from living in Malaysia, which is different from living in China, in Myanmar, in Nepal. So the social economic background, I mean, Singapore is a urbanized place. Neighborliness is a bit weak. If you live in a condo, you may not know your neighbors. If you live in HDB, maybe old estate, but if new estate, maybe a lot of rented out to foreigners, so you may not have the kampong feeling also. So Singapore has that very special social situation, but Singapore has also very special situation in the sense that we are a wealthy country, okay? So we always get CDC vouchers, and then for us to find work is not as bad as other places, but still you can sense the economic shift nowadays, more retrenchment. Um, and you can also see that the policy has this focus on access for aged care. So in other countries, you don't have that. So we have active aging centers everywhere, senior care centers everywhere, AIC only at a call, only if you know. If you don't know, then you just bring to the A&G department, they'll admit your mother, then come back, a lot of services. But do you want to be admitted for services? It's an overkill, older person going to hospital is no joke. They will become a bit more disabled. And you can also go to polyclinic. Then it depends. Some doctors understand, some doctors don't understand. So that's the background, but it's better than many other countries. Okay? But also still a lot of gaps. Huh? So the socioeconomic background will will give you the platform for caregiving. And if it's well designed, less stress, poorly designed, higher stress. Like Singapore, our HDB lift landing is really great. Okay. Some places like now I'm consulting for Nanning, 5 stories houses, no lift. And then people who with a fracture, they cannot come out of the house. So it's a different kind of stress that they feel. This is another very important study by a group in NUS, CARE, Center for Aging Research and Education. That is an ongoing longitudinal study. So every year or every few years, they'll go back to the group of caregivers to interview. And then it's headed by a geriatrician. I cannot remember that. Malhotra, Dr. Malhotra, and also Art. Yeah, Art is doing the qualitative side of things. So he gave a presentation and it was really great. And these are some of the reasons for caregiver stress from Singapore. Behavioral issues caused by dementia, advanced frailty, and managing intense activities of daily living. So ADL is the one that's causing a lot of resource, time, effort. ADLs are showers is the most taxing. Dressing a bit easier. Toileting, transferring to the commode chair or cleaning after, clearing the bucket. You have to be comfortable clearing other people's urine and feces. Okay? Changing diapers, you have to do that. So those are also very taxing. Then transferring from the bed to the chair. If the person can transfer, it's easier for you. But if you have to lift, if you do it once, it's okay. Like as a doctor, sometimes I do it once. Okay, soy. But do it a few times a day, or that in a nursing home, the care aides are doing for the whole lot of people. Wow, it's backbreaking. So transferring, helping to walk, all these are very taxing. Then feeding. Feeding is very easy, but sometimes it takes 1.5 hours to feed. Okay, it's very slow, and then you must make sure you cannot be too rushed. Then medicine, then sometimes you have to check blood pressure and many monitoring, and then the medicine, there's so many, and sometimes the senior refuse, then you get very stressed. Sometimes the senior scold you, then you get very stressed. So ADL is very stressful. And then deterioration of health condition is also very stressful. Say you take care of your mom, then suddenly she starts to reduce appetite. Then you don't know whether this is significant or not. You bring to the emergency department. Then the doctor says, why do you bring? No, because constipation only lah. Give you some medicine. Next time don't need to come. You call your doctor. Then the next time, poor appetite. Then you bring in 1 day late. They say, why do you bring in so late? Lost appetite, can be pneumonia, can be urine infection, can be many things. So as a layperson, how do you know? So deterioration of health condition. The other thing is many other, like when your mom is like turning for the worst, you don't know whether this time am I losing her. So it's the kind of drama again and again. And dementia, sometimes you don't know whether your mom is still there or not, don't remember you, and then take you for another person. Then you still consider mother, but you don't know whether your mother is there. So it's like, it's a grief and loss, but it's not clean. It's don't know whether have you lost your mom or not. Then occasionally, suddenly she remembers you, then you feel so happy. So digital health condition is also very challenging. Financial strain and retirement adequacy. So a lot of caregivers, there's another study by Aware that a lot of women, there's a lot of financial strain that's invisible. Some of them take part-time, not because they want to do part-time, it's because of caregiving duty. Some of them forego promotion because they have to take care of somebody else. Some of them quit. And then people say, oh, very good early retirement. They don't know you actually retire in order to be caregiver. So there's some financial impact. While your friends like, wow, accumulating their wealth. Then for you, it's not your life. So it is that. And also, if you don't work, you may not have enough CPF. Maybe you have, but it's just the the pension, I mean not pension, the CPF life payout may not be enough, just a few $100 a month or 1,000 plus a month. In this day and age, 1,000 plus is not enough for you. So you do worry about those things as well. So there are a lot of financial sacrifice. Family dynamics is another cause. Okay, so all these are all from Singaporeans interview, okay? Family dynamics and conflict, including seeking family support. So sometimes everybody always complain about their stress, then you don't bother to ask anymore. Or that you are the one taking care, but they always come and criticize. Or that they only turn up when your mom is in the hospital and they've got lots of things to say. And then sometimes they make you feel that you're not doing a good job. So these are the things. Burnout. Frequently, they feel social isolation, like a respite, poor sleep quality, especially in dementia care. At night, sometimes there's a phenomenon called sundowning. In the evening time, the person with dementia can become very agitated. It's a biological response, just like maybe it's evolution. All animals, when the sun is sunset, they all want to fly home. Wherever they are, they'll fly home. Then including human, sun is setting, I want to go home. Then suddenly they feel this one is like a very strange place. In the daytime, they look at this, they don't feel anything special, but in sundowning, they feel really unsettled. Also, as we grow older, the melatonin level is very low. So you don't fall asleep so easy. You don't stay asleep very well. Also, there are some people in their youth, they are night owl. When they're old, their natural biology clock is nighttime, they're very alert. Wow, then they want to eat, they want to go shopping, they want to work. Then they get up and they walk, and then you're sleeping and you're very worried that they fall. So you also cannot sleep. So social isolation is when you just cannot meet your friends. And also when you don't work, you also don't have social life. So this is social isolation. And then you feel burnt out. Then you neglect personal health. Managing migrant workers is very tough. Okay, we thought we can hire maid, but many of us have no experience doing HR work. We are not naturally born HR manager. Some people, they are very, very strict with the maid. And then the children criticize, Mom, you cannot treat your maid like that one. They say, if I don't, they'll steal your thing. Then they're very strict and the maid run away. Okay. Sometimes they're very lenient with the maid, and the maid is always on handphone, and then they 放高利贷, okay, they give out credit, and then they get into trouble. So you also have to jaga a little bit. But that balance is very hard for people without management experience. So very stressful. Hiring maid is very stressful. Okay. Balancing work and caregiving, work disruption, forced retirement. Okay, from the horse's mouth, Dr. Art was sharing when we organized this caregiver conference. No, it was Mahotra was sharing that the biggest source of stress is actually the last one, balancing work. The other one is grief and loss. These two are the most stressful. I'm not sharing today, but he also mentioned the biggest support that you can give to a caregiver is emotional support. Not the financial, not the respite. All these are, of course, very important, but the emotional support from friends are the most valued. So hearing them out, asking them for tea and so on. Yeah. So signs of burnout: feeling overwhelmed, tired often or sad, constantly worried, too much sleep and not enough sleep, gaining or losing weight, irritability, not interest in activities you used to enjoy, frequent headaches, abusing alcohol. So now burnout is a well-described mental health condition. During COVID, a lot of people felt burnt out. So there was a lot of discussion around managing burnout. But it's really, if you don't manage stress well, you go into burnout, then you have to stop. Okay. The caregiving have to stop. So sometimes, even though as a community doctor and worker, we try our best to, because you have your target, like a lot of doctors, the target is the patient, the older person. The welfare of the older person is to live at home. We try to encourage a caregiver to continue supporting the parent, at home. Sending to the nursing home is very sad for her. But nowadays, I'm a bit wiser. Cannot. Sometimes you have to take care of the caregiver. It's for self-preservation. No choice, have to go to nursing home. Otherwise, you cannot make it yourself. So sometimes I'll advocate, go to a nursing home. But also I work in some nursing home. They are not as bad as we think. I work in one nursing home in the north. Usually my first question when I do the routine review, every 6 months I do routine review. Those who can talk, I'll ask them, are you happy here? Routinely, I always hear, yes, I'm happy here. Although the newcomers, when I do a first assessment, they're unhappy when they first come in. But after a period of time, they adjust to it. We cannot bear to see our parent in nursing home because we cannot bear to see ourselves living in a nursing home. But if we do go into a nursing home, from my own experience, all of us can adjust to it. Even though this nursing home is a bit dated, it's a bit old, it's like open ward. But many of them, they adjust to it and they are laughing and smiling. And also the vibes is very good. I must also say, the nurses in the nursing home that I've encountered, many of them are migrant workers from the Philippines, from India, from Myanmar. They are very cheerful and they're very caring and they are very respectful and really like family. So nursing home is not that bad. But of course, there are some very good ones, but it's the adjustment period that was hard. But anyway, it is very difficult if we have to move in a nursing home or the caregiver send the mother to a nursing home. The caregiver stress doesn't go down. Sometimes when they send the parent to a nursing home, the caregiver stress maintain and remain because of guilt. So it's really difficult. Yeah, so yeah, what can I say? Except the Dhamma. So, but I've seen a lot of caregivers who are very so I hope if you use the Dhamma, you find caregiving is a very joyful journey. I've seen a lot of very joyful, very wise, very mature caregiver. And surely they'll be reborn in a good place when they die. So let's talk about self-care, okay? Because we want to talk about managing stress. There's also a lot of research around self-care. What is self-care? Self-care is a process of maintaining health through health promotion practices and disease management performed in both healthy and ill states. So this general thing called self-care. But health in the more for all along, according to WHO, World Health Organization, health is biopsychosocial. So it's not just physical health, but also mental health, but also social health. So think of it like this. Self-care is about maintaining biopsychosocial well-being for ourselves through good practices, good behavior, and disease prevention. So it begins with monitoring. Monitoring is a routine body surveillance and body listening, like just now what we did, okay? Mindful on the body, mindful on the mind. So many people are not meditators. So what they do is they do journaling. Okay? It's a way for us to listen to our body and our mind. Self-awareness and insight, regular check-ins, awareness of symptoms. And then management is about taking action. When we see there are some changes, and then should I take action? Either go and seek treatment or seek support or to do some crisis planning. The idea is to have effective treatment of symptoms. So think of it as not just physical, but also mental and also social. And then maintain. Maintain is prevention. So even as we practice self-care, caring for others, we also need to make sure that we eat healthily, exercise to enhance our well-being and maintain physical and emotional stability. So hygiene, diet, sleep, supportive relationship. So this is all from a lot of studies. I got this material from AIC, but I realized that there are a lot of research around self-care anyway. So monitoring is self-awareness. So self-awareness, this is something that National Council of Social Service did in 2016, led by my friend when she was in AIC, Dr. Tan Wing Mui. But they hired a design thinking company to do it among all the social service sector people. And they found that, so if you use design thinker, the way of thinking is different from social workers, from doctors, from nurses. They come from a perspective of the person experiencing. So they found that there are altogether 5 archetypes of caregiver based on this grid. On the longitudinal axis is identity. At the top is I am a caregiver 24/7. At the bottom is I am not a caregiver at all. Then on the horizontal axis is about ability. I am not equipped for caregiving, capacity, not ability. So on the extreme is I am well equipped for caregiving. And they're altogether 5 archetypes. The one at the left upper quadrant is called reactive. So they are low on being self-equipped, relatively high on self-identity as a caregiver. The second are the self-reliant, very high on identity, but medium in terms of ability to care. There's a balanced one. The identity is middling, but the ability is quite strong. And then there's a conscious one, which is not fully identifying, but the ability is there. And then the detached, which is don't really think he's a caregiver, and the ability is very poor. These archetypes is very useful for us to use it as a basis for self-care. So people who are detached, they are passive and detached. They don't even think that they're a caregiver, and they don't care about caregiving ability. So to them, they go about doing their own activities, and they don't really understand what is it that they need to do. And then they don't even they don't really care about their future if the care recipient become worse. So they just go about their work. Maybe they plan their own future in their own ways. They want to promote, they want to advance their career, or they are looking for love or something else. So they are oblivion to the need of the caregiver. So the care recipient need to worry for themselves. Okay, so this is a detached caregiver. So to a care provider, a detached caregiver, I assume this person live alone. This detached caregiver is not in my equation unless I can engage this person to become a caregiver. There's a lot of usually it is a mother with disability and the son who is always locked in the room playing computer game. Okay, so this son is a detached caregiver. Maybe never really been socialized that you need to care for your family member. The reactive caregiver is one who is very helpless. They're always thinking that they don't know what to do. And then they feel this burden. They feel that they are a caregiver and they're very worried about it. So, and then they have no capacity to plan for their future. They have no capacity to care for themselves. So for people like that, we will need to calm them down and give them a lot of resources and help them manage their own mental health. The balanced caregiver is one that know that they're a caregiver, but they know that they are not just a caregiver. They are also their own person. Okay? So they're very balanced. And they will, because they are balanced, they have a capacity to learn. Okay? So they are usually they know what to do. If you tell them, they'll ask you some critical question and then they say, okay, let me try, So they're very balanced. The self-reliant caregiver are those who maybe overcorrect, They're hyper responsible. Everything is shouldered, and then they tend to have back pain. And then they feel like everybody don't know, so they'll be micromanaging the maid, and then all the other siblings are cut off from caregiving because they want to fully own it, because they feel that you all don't know it, then they do that. The problem with them is that they have their own set way of doing things. They may not be open to be to advise, and they may not plan for their own future, okay, because they are totally owning the responsibility. And then the conscious caregivers are people who are not sure whether they are a caregiver, but they are trying to learn, and then they are very easy to teach. Okay, so usually, okay, there's a lot to say about this particular method. That there's an exercise with an exercise book for all the caregivers to rate themselves and then check with their counterpart together, and then they'll listen to each other, and then they become more aware of what kind of caregiver they are and how do they balance themselves. So this is one way. So why I'm bringing this in is I want to talk about self-awareness. Self-awareness help us care for ourselves and also be aware of our caregiving style. Because the self-reliant one, the detached one, the anxious one, the and reactive one, may not be coping very well for very long. Okay. So self-awareness is the beginning of self-care, also the beginning of becoming a more balanced caregiver. So now I will talk about the Dhamma. I mean, when we're caregiving, we don't think about the Dhamma. But if you remember the Dhamma teaching, it can help you balance and can help you become a bit more self-aware and then have more self-care, and your caregiving journey become a bit more sustainable. So which part of the Dhamma can show us some guidance? We know the Dhamma teaching is Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Samadhi, Panya is particularly important for Nibbana. For day-to-day life, what is really more practical is before Samadhi is Sati Sampajanya, which is a mindfulness and clear comprehension. Which if you study the Buddha's teaching, especially those that are very elaborate on the path to Nibbana, the Buddha will talk about Sati Sampajanya. Okay. For example, Samana Pala Sutta. Okay. So Sila is important because keeping precepts help us prevent remorse. A lot of us, we may not think very much about keeping precepts, but when you are really weak in the mind, not having remorse is really, really important. So keeping precepts, no killing, no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct, no drinking alcohol, because it can cause you to break the other precepts. So Sila. And then with Sila, the mind is peaceful as a background because you're disturbed by things that are disturbing, but compared with people who don't have clear conscience, your stress is mild compared with people without clear conscience. So with the clear conscience, we just confront the stress of caregiving, which is relatively mild. Then the teaching of Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and clarity, will be a good guidance. So let me explain a little bit more about mindfulness. Okay, before I talk about mindfulness, I talk about Aramana Pachayo. So this is a teaching in dependent origination. So when we hear about dependent origination, we usually think about the 12 links of dependent origination. Because the 12 link is most important for existential dukkha, existence suffering. Because the 12 link of dependent origination help us understand samsara, how it works from one life to another. If you have a view of samsara, a lifespan is just a flash in the pan. It's just a 1 millisecond in the whole scheme of things. But to us now, this 100 years of life is long. Although in the universal scheme, your samsara, 100 years is so short. So dependent origination is about talking about one life after another life after another life. This is suffering. This is dukkha. Okay, to really break out of it, the key is in there are a few control areas: the karma and then the defilements. If you were to do good karma, you'll be reborn in a good place. But if you really want to get out of samsara, you need to remove the defilement. So that's the teaching behind dependent origination. But within each life, there's also mechanism of dependent origination. But more immediately are the 24 conditionalities, which is also part of the teaching of dependent origination, explained deeply in Abhidhamma. I mentioned this last time when I was here talking about Vitaka Santana Sutta about stress management. There are four main conditions that we can make use of in welfare. Okay. The first one is karma pachayo, which is the condition caused by karma. If you do any deeds with karmic force, that means you have a ignorance, and then with ignorance, surely you have some attachment, and then you do any deeds with an intention, there is a karmic force. This karmic force becomes very important at our last thought moment. It causes helplessly to have certain images and certain mental phenomenon in the mind that determines where we are reborn. So that is karma pachayo. So it's very important that we do good karma and avoid unwholesome karma. So that's karma pachayo. Another one is aramana pachayo, upanisa pachayo, and ati pachayo. Okay. Ati pachayo is about having this will helplessly happen. For example, you have earth element, the water, fire, and wind will happen. If you see an object, surely eye consciousness will arise and the mind thought process will happen. This is ati pachayo. It's helpless. When this happens, that will happen. You have no choice. So this also not very practical. What you know is that large part of our experience is helpless. Then the remaining two, Upanisa Pachayo and Aramana Pachayo. Aramana Pachayo is very useful for stress management. Okay? Upanisa Pachayo is very useful for improving your life. Okay, I don't have time to explain that, but I want to talk about Aramana Pachayo. Our mind is dependent on the contact. Eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. Mind contact is what is the mind object that hits the mind. And then when you are hit with that object, your mind will go in a certain direction. And therein lies the switch to managing the mind. Any activities and object that can divert our attention away from stressful situation can reduce stress. So if you are, say, worried about something in the future, hasn't happened yet, you cannot help but keep thinking about it. What you can do is go to the park. Okay, so to see the leaf and then the bird, suddenly there's a squirrel running across. So your mind is taken off that object. Very simple, and that is aramana pachayo, object conditioning. The object conditions the mind. It can be eye, the ears. A lot of time we are not aware, but the mind is obsessed with something, a tiger, which is made of paper, because it is a tiger from the future. It hasn't happened yet. It's just a possibility. But because of our traumatic past, we tend to risk manage. So we always look at the negative possibility. Then we're obsessed with it. Then we're stressed. So we just change the subject. So go to a park. Or you can eat sweet food. But that's why a lot of us, when we are stressed or bored, we open the kitchen, the fridge, okay? Or we watch TV, or many of us will start to swipe handphone. Okay, so that's very common, which is also aramana pachayo, is to get the mind away from that restlessness, the agitation, the unsolvable problem, the helplessness. Okay, or you can listen to music. You can also do exercise. Of course, there are people who take to drinks. Of course, as Buddhists, we learn that if our mind is mindful on the breath, we can keep the mind away from the stress. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is a thing. Okay. So if you're mindful on a neutral thing like your body or your breath and so on, your mind is taken away from that paper tiger. The mind, in order to be mindful, as I mentioned, you will realize that you need to keep the mind wholesome. Otherwise, you cannot stay mindful. This is a law, a psychological law. The mind wholesome means it is respectful, soft, trusting, accepting, non-attached. There's always a bit of a detachment there. It is upright. It is balanced. Sometimes you can have a bit of gratitude. Gratitude is wisdom. Wisdom will promote wholesome mind, okay? Then the mind become really wholesome. So if you practice mindfulness very regularly, it means you are practicing wholesome mind regularly. You can practice wholesome mind by doing dana, but when you're in a crowded place with a lot of activities, your mind is not always wholesome. There'll be certain things that trigger attachment, certain things that trigger aversion. It's not always wholesome. But if you're mindful on the breath, mindful, and you can actually habituate the mind to become wholesome. And this habituation of the mind is the one that I didn't mention, the Upanisaya Pachayo, the decisive support condition. After you emerge from your mindfulness practice, your mind tends to stay wholesome for a while longer. If you practice daily, your mind tends to be wholesome regularly. So this mindfulness practice will help us keep the mind away from the stressful situation and habituate it to become wholesome. So mindfulness works like this. What about, okay, so we know that you can keep the mind away from the stressful object by any object, including sugars, carbs, and alcohol. So it's important for us to choose the good and wholesome and the meaningful to be mindful of. Okay. So unwholesome object like alcohol and sweet things, right? You can distract yourself, but the mind is not wholesome, and it's not mindful. It is just greed after greed after greed. You can habituate your mind to become addicted. So be careful. Okay. So we make use of this teaching to let us know that we can deal with stress by changing the subject matter. And there are good and bad subject. We choose the good subject so that the mind can practice mindfulness. This mindfulness. But what about sampajanya? They are twin brothers. Okay, they are like right and left legs. When the Buddha explained mindfulness, he usually also explained clear comprehension. When he explained clear comprehension, he also explained mindfulness. But clear comprehension is slightly different. It is an inquisitive, penetrative understanding. It is a wisdom, but it's just a moment of wisdom. So mindfulness renders a brief pause and an open space for us to inquire into the activity at hand. So this is not it's very intuitive. So it's like when you're mindful and then your mind is clear. But clear comprehension, what does it mean? It is explained in the commentary to Samanya Pala Sutta, okay, that when the Buddha talked about sampajanya, he refers to sampajanya of four things. What is the purpose of whatever we are doing? Is it appropriate? What is the best way of doing it? And what is the subject matter at hand? And ultimately, what is the characteristics of existence? So how does it apply? Say, when you set up a company, you always have a vision and mission. That is your purpose. Why, whatever you do, you want to have a purpose. Then you need to create a strategy. You want to have a purpose, you want to have a strategy that causes the least harm, doesn't break precept. And also use the least resources, most efficient way of achieving. So that is that clear comprehension of suitability. And then the domain of practice is, you can also be clearly comprehending, like for example, when we are mindful on the breath, you know, the clear comprehension is, you know, this practice is to gain samadhi. Samadhi is for the sake of wisdom, so that you can realize nibbana. So you know the purpose. Is it suitable? Well, my duty has been disengaged responsibly, and then now I have time for myself, so it's suitable that I practice meditation on the breath now. So it's suitable. So you're considering many aspects before you do, and then mindful on the breath. Understanding of the breath is clear comprehension on the object, the domain of practice. And if you are practicing vipassana, you observe the phenomenon as impermanent suffering non-self. How does it apply in caregiving? Why are we giving care? So when you're mindful, caring, or planning, sometimes you're just mindful on that, then you're focused on the task at hand. That is clear comprehension of domain of practice. But sometimes you have to make a certain decision. Then you're mindful and see what is the purpose of, say, hiring a maid, is to relieve my stress so that I can care longer. So you know the purpose. Then you think, is it suitable for me to hire a maid? Can my mom take it? Is my home ready to have a third person? Am I comfortable with having a stranger in the house? So you reflect on this suitability. So there's clear comprehension of purpose, clear comprehension of suitability. Then when you're focused on the activity, you're clearly comprehending on the domain of your caregiving activities. And then you give your best. The result sometimes is very good, but because there are many conditions, sometimes the result is very poor. The maid come and there's a quarrel, or your mom cannot take it because she just cannot stand having a person, stranger in the house. And then you failed. Then you reflect the true nature of things, in the sense that not everything is due to you. Not everything is your fault. And also not everything is because of you, then it's successful. There are many other conditions. Also, you know, sometimes it's very balanced, very steady. You also know that this is because the conditions are there, so it is there. So when the condition is not there, it falls apart. There is no sense of, say, pride, you know, or conceit or wrong view that it's because of me, you know. So it's a, I mean, it's quite common among people who are hyper responsible, that they think that they are accountable to everything. So that's because they don't have clear comprehension of the true nature of things. So that's how we make use of the teaching of clear comprehension. You can also make use of it if you're running a company or doing a piece of project. Clarity of purpose, clarity of strategy, clarity of subject matter, and clarity of what really matters. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So the other bit of the teaching, which is aligned with the clarity of true nature of things, is the teaching of the four Brahma Vihara. You know, you can see all beings. You can also see predator and prey. You can also see people suffering from dementia, cancer. You feel very sad, but there's no need to feel sad. You can feel compassion, but don't need to feel sad. Then sometimes there's successes, you can feel mudita, you know, sympathetic joy. Then gradually you start to see that it's all samsara in action. So there are four Brahma Vihara in caregiving. We send metta in the sense that everybody is equally worthy of our friendship, including the hired helpers, including the nurses or the home personal care aide that come to the house, including your siblings and your parent. Compassion is when you see suffering, you want to do something. So you want to care for your mother because you feel that it's difficult for her. So you want to do that. But when there are successes, you feel happy. But when there are failures, you feel that well, not everything is within our control. So upekka. So it keep the mind really balanced. But the love, the compassion is real. The joy is real. The upekka is with wisdom, you rise above. Okay? But because being a daughter or a wife or a husband or a son, you can't expect yourself to be upekka so easily. We have a lot of attachment. It's normal. Okay, what happen if you are still stressed? So that's when Vitaka Santana Sutta come in. Thought displacement is the same as Aramana Pachayo. But another way is to consider shame and moral dread in the sense that if you're very remorseful or that you feel very you feel anger, reflect that these are unwholesome feelings. The Buddha did mention, as long as there's a moment of aversion, at that moment you're not practicing the Buddha's teachings. Then we feel don't wallow in those unwholesome mind. Remorse is unwholesome. Okay. Repentance is wholesome. Repentance is not remorse. Repentance is just being honest about mistakes that we've done. Okay, that's repentance. And then we seek forgiveness. Remorse is feeling, blaming ourselves. That is unwholesome mind. If we continue with it, we're not practicing Buddha's teachings. We're not disciple of the Buddha. Okay. Let go is the third way. The fourth way is calming the thoughts by challenging assumptions. That is, a lot of time we think a lot about the future or we think a lot about past and then judging ourselves because we assume. We assume what? We assume like if you think about the future and you get very anxious, it's because you assume things will go wrong. Or you assume the worst. Or you assume that other people will do certain things because of you. That is baseless. Then we have to cut that and say, I really don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, that's just assumption. Also, the past. Sometimes we think I did that, I did wrong, it's because of me. That's also wrong assumption. It's not always because of you. Okay? It's also because of her. It's also because of him. It's also because of the weather. It's also because of the whatever. So you also have to like let go of this assumption. So that's calming the thoughts by questioning. Do I have to do it? Then you calm down. Then lastly is through effort. So that is the way we manage stress according to the Dhamma. So in real life, of course, you have to be very fluid. But if you practice mindfulness regularly, it becomes a habit, and that will condition you to stay mindful, stay wholesome. When the mind is mindful and wholesome, clear comprehension is easy. The penetrative thinking comes. Then you can direct it to why am I doing this? What is the best way of doing this? What's the subject matter? What really matters? Then that will keep you balanced. And then if it's still stress, then you practice the Vitakka Santana Sutta 5 methods. The next section, I like to talk about how knowing how to care, also due to using Dhamma as a guide. What is caring? Okay, according to a geriatrician from upstate New York, he defines caring as helping another person grow. Okay, this is not Dhamma, but let's just take it as it is. So what does it take to help a disabled, frail, or dying person grow? We know that we need to take care of the physiological need and then pain. We need to help the person feel safe, then to give lots of love, dignity and self-esteem, self-actualization. And we know this is from the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if you take care of somebody else, as a caregiver, you don't have to be a nurse or a doctor. Otherwise, how can, right? All caregivers, many of us are lay people. We are not really trained. But you go by first principles, physiological need, security, love and sense of belonging, self-esteem, help this person grow. And that's caregiving, right? And this aligns with Bill Thomas' claim that caring is to help another person grow. So we need to know the tangible aspect of caregiving because you want to take out the physiological needs, the freedom from pain, the sense of safety. But the love and belonging, you have to they get it from among the family, and friends. So there are a lot of resources from Agency for Integrated Care. We've got a learning guidebook for caregivers, and there are many, many resources. You can go to AIC website and get it. Okay. So this is all for practical. So I cannot give a talk about practical caregiving. It's impossible because care recipients are so heterogeneous. How can I give a talk about caregiving, right? I give you the principles and the resources. This is from the Dhamma, okay, Katanyu Sutta, about gratitude from the Anguttara Nikaya. Even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on another for 100 years, and were to look after them by anointing, massaging, bathing, and rubbing their limbs, and they were to defecate and urinate right there on your shoulders, you would not in that way pay or repay your parents. Why? Because mother and father do much for their children. They care for them. They nourish them. They introduce us to this world. Okay? But anyone who rouses his unbelieving mother and father, settles in and establishes them in faith. Okay? Conviction also like faith, rouses his unvirtuous mother and father, settles and establishes them in virtue, in generosity, and in wisdom. To this extent, one pays and repays one's mother and father. So it's about establishing faith and the Dhamma in generosity, in precepts, and in wisdom. Okay, these four qualities is the almost like the highest that we can expect of a layperson. The Buddha talked a lot about this in the Anguttara Nikaya. If you're established in faith, it's equivalent to becoming a Sotapanna, a stream enterer. So lastly, I'd like to talk about the Buddha's teachings on how we can grow as we are caregiver. I mean, a lot of us are caregiver and we feel with opportunity loss. I would like to ask you, opportunity for what? Then you say, well, making friends, accumulating wealth, being healthy. Then I'll ask you, why do you want to have friends, have money, stay healthy? Then I can do things that I like. Why do you want to do things that I like? Well, so that I can have a good life. Then I'll ask, what do you think is a good life? If you're a Dharma practitioner, you know a good life is when I have a good death. What is a good death? A good death is when you're reborn in a good place that you can continue to practice. If you're born in a good place without practice, then that's not a good death. So in order to practice, yes. Then how do you ensure you have a good death in order to be reborn in a good place so you can practice? Then you say, I need to practice the Dhamma. So can you practice the Dhamma while being a caregiver? Yes. It's the perfections of the parami. Okay? So the parami is not just for the bodhisattva. In the the first time parami was mentioned is in the Buddha Wangsa. Okay, the history is in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the scripture called the Buddha Wangsa, the history of the Buddhas. And there was a part when I can't remember which city, Venerable Shariputra asked the Buddha to explain his bodhisattva career. That's when he talked about ascetic sumedha in ancient time, in Buddha Dipankara time. And that's when the Buddha explained about the practice of the parami. There are 10 paramis that can be condensed into the 6 parami, which can be condensed into just 2. Wisdom and compassion. So it's all found in the Buddha Wangsa. So why do I say that it's not just for bodhisattva practice? Because my teachers, the forest tradition from Myanmar, they emphasize a lot of parami. Because there are people who practice Noble Eightfold Path, but they still make no progress, and it's related to parami of the past. And it's not just from the modern one, it's a lineage from ancient times, from ancient practitioners, that they say that the parami is for all people, not just for the Buddha. Even the Arahant disciple like Sariputta and Mahamoggallana also have to practice parami. And I understand some Thai tradition also emphasize the practice of parami. Okay. So which are the 10 paramis? These are, you can consider this as parami to polish our character, okay? So that we become more conducive and teachable. And so that when we practice sila, it's very natural. When we practice samadhi, it is so easy. And then when we practice vipassana, it's so obvious. And then the wisdom develops so fast. And realizing nibbana is just a matter of time. So that is because of parami, built over life after life. So all of us don't know whether we have parami. That's why we practice, okay? So the 10 paramis are, so as I'm listing them, you can consider, as a caregiver, do I do this? Generosity is about letting go of your resources, including your time. Keeping precept is about moments when you want to break, but you don't. Renunciation is about letting go of opportunities. Wisdom is about penetratively understanding what really matters, and dependent origination, and the conditionality that not everything is due to you, and that also what the matter at hand about all the tangible understanding of caregiving, and the clarity of purpose, clarity of strategy. Clear comprehension is wisdom. Okay. Energy, a lot of effort to stay awake when you really want to sleep. Patience, when you're being spit at or scolded, you don't have aversion mind. Telling the truth, even when it's very hard. To say that I am depressed, even then you want to hide. This is truthfulness. To say that I'm really worried, even though it makes you look bad in front of your friends. Determination, keeping your own promise, loving kindness, and equanimity. So in caregiving, we all practice the 10 paramis. Okay? But the 10 paramis are only paramis. These are meritorious deeds. They are only parami if you direct it towards nibbana. Okay? May all these merits be cause and condition because of Upanisa Pachayo. These will help us transform our personality, our character, to make us more teachable, more keen for nibbana. Many of us are not. We learn the Dhamma, but nibbana, no. But by doing all these things, all of us will gradually let go, realize that nothing really matters except nibbana. Nothing is really meaningful except nibbana. Okay. So when we direct our merits towards nibbana, then these are called parami. Lastly, I like to share Siddhaka Sutta, which is from the Samyutta Nikaya, in the section related to the 37 Bodhipakkhiyas, the part of mindfulness. It's an acrobat and his student. One is at the bottom and the student is supposed to climb onto a pole at the top and do acrobat. Then the teacher asks the student, you look after me, then I look after you. Then the student said, teacher, no, you look after yourself, I look after myself. Then the Buddha says, looking after oneself, one looks after others. Looking after others, one looks after oneself. How does one look after others? By looking after oneself, by practicing mindfulness, by developing it, and by doing it a lot. And how does one look after oneself? By looking after others, by practicing patience, by practicing non-harming, which is compassion, by practicing loving kindness, and by caring for others. So when we care for others, we care for ourselves. When we care for ourselves, we care for others. So in summary, awareness is the beginning of self-care. Stress can be managed if we can identify with the challenges and the unmet needs within ourselves. We don't have to overcome our challenges alone. Lots of tangible and emotional support is available around us if we look hard enough. Mindfulness is a life skill that helps in times of stress. It can give rise to clarity and answers. Stress well managed is rewarding and uplifting. Caregiving is a love language, not separate from life. We are not just a caregiver. When we take care of others, we take care of ourselves. When we take care of ourselves, we take care of others. So that's it. Okay. Are there any questions?
under what circumstances we need the caregiver?
It's for recording. Yeah.
Dr. Ng, thanks for the talk. I want to ask one question. Under what circumstances do you need a caregiver?
Oh, when we cannot take care of ourselves, particularly in IADL. IADL's instrumental activities of daily living includes house chores, preparing food, buying groceries, taking public transport, making use of the phone, including the smartphone. If we can't do this, we need somebody to visit us at least once a week to help. If we are dependent in activities of daily living, showers, toileting, dressing, we need people to come to us more frequently. If you cannot dress or go to the toilet, you need someone's living with you.
Is the question of that we cannot look after ourselves in our daily life or what?
Yes. So there are different grades of looking after ourselves, from advanced ADL to instrumental ADL to basic ADL. So if you cannot do advanced ADL, you probably cannot work, but you can still live in the community on your own. But if you cannot do IADL, you will need someone to help you once in a few days.
So, the government spell out something like
Yeah. Please.
Thank you, Doctor. In the midst of your saying, suddenly I feel like crying. Because I went through, I think more of feeling grateful. Some of the things that you mentioned, didn't know actually, it's like part of the Buddhist teaching. And I want to be grateful. I feel that people who needs help, it's very important you have very supportive friends and family members. So it makes my taking care of my mother. Of course, there are stress, but so much of learning there. So there to ask for help. And very important, you have very supportive, very wise friends who are with you. And I want to share one of the most, I just want
Please, yeah.
Share one of the very important things that a good friend of mine shared with me. She's a Buddhist friend. At that time, I cared for my mother with the help of my sisters and friends until the very last moment when my mom needs tube feeding. This is one area we cannot help her. Then I say, and the interesting thing you say about strategy, the house that we are staying is very small. I cannot get a maid because I think the environment is not conducive for my mom. Then the next option is to send her to the daycare, old folk center,
Yes.
but which I think we all feel guilty. How can I let my mom stay there? But a friend of mine said, maybe your mom would rather be happy somebody who is not her daughter or son to take care of her. Wow, because then I imagine myself as my mother. It come a point where she couldn't speak anymore, but she rather somebody instead of her own children to take care of her. That would be wonderful, right? I think this part is, I just put myself and said, yeah, sometimes we feel that, hey, you feel bad if you're not taking care of, who knows? Your parents might be happier if some other people to take care of them, to wash them up, to whatever. And then my mother stayed there, I feel that, hey, the environment, that's what you say, the foreign caregiver, they're so kind.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and what you see, it was a journey that I went through. I feel very, I don't know, it may be but emotional, but I think there is some kind of joy that, okay. And very important is not to feel guilty. I could have done this, I could have done that. Of course, this will creep in.
Yeah.
But then thanks to, whatever learning. So
Sadhu.
So seek help.
Yes.
It is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. and good friends,
Yeah.
wise friends are very, very important for
Yeah.
us. Don't don't take on everything.
Yes, yes.
Whatever you say is like, oh, I may not be able to do all this, but some of the points are there. Thank you, thank you.
Doctor, this one not specifically about caregiving because I don't really have experience. But in my coursework, recently we just finished like a 1 year longitudinal patient experience. So we went to visit a patient. He has end-stage kidney disease, and then he has some issues with mobility because of his legs. But the thing is, he's not very hopeful about the life, and even though he has end-stage kidney disease already, yet he still places importance on eating like high salt, high sweet, or all these kind of thing. So, and then for me, I'm a nursing student, like I want to tell him that you need to stop eating the sweet and salty foods, but then on the one hand, that's like his only pleasure in life left. So do I really want to do that? So sometimes I don't really know what to say. Any from your experience, what's the best response?
Thank you very much. The more we take care of people, we realize that to us, health is the goal, right? But as you grow older and older, you realize that health is actually a means to something meaningful. But what is that meaning? If all of us, our whole life, we're just looking after money, health, family, this is the meaning, right? Then we forgot that there's something else beyond this, which is these are all in order to. So the clarity of purpose is important as we live in our youth. Otherwise, when we're old age, we don't know what this life is for. And we always postpone such question because it's so philosophical and it's almost academic. It's very hard to conceive. So that's what happened if we never live with mindfulness and clarity. So now that we are old, we don't know why we want to take the medicine for. There's nobody around, no family, no kids, no nothing. Why do I want to live? And then why can't I say euthanasia? Of course, it's illegal in Singapore. So all these questions will surface. It's not as if there's no sense of meaning. It's just that at that time, they're clouded by a lot of immediate object of the mind, which is paper tiger. Okay, so the mind is very unwholesome, clinging on to wrong views and everything. What we can do, I'm not sure whether is it practical. It depends on whether the person is open to this. You can do like getting to know this person about the life journey. Okay? What are the memories? What are the highs? Focus on the beautiful things. What are the successes? And then the troughs, that means the failures. Don't focus on the failures, but what helped this person overcome? Let the person share. Then as a listener, we listen out for the emotions, the stories, but also what's important is what is important to this person. And also what are his strengths? And then reflect it to him. So I see to you, loyalty is important, friendship is important, family is important, helping others is important, or that being praised, being looked up to, dignity is important. So use good language. And I say, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you can also share about the strength. You actually overcome that. I think you are very resilient. You have got that positive emotion. Then once they feel that, they'll start to see the sense of meaning and they'll start to appreciate their own strength. Not easy to do. Okay, this is a bit of counseling techniques, listening skills, but as a nursing student, we need to acquire such skills because when we take care of the frail, the dying and all that, I mean, the important thing is for people to make sense, and also find a sense of purpose and all that. So for example, if a person really value relationship, then if we can become the relationship or that the person value being able to be needed or contribute, then we can do something to do that. So if they offer us tea, let's just accept because that is what gives them a sense of meaning. So we have to go beyond the traditional nursing or even medical stuff. But you need to have sufficient relationship for this to happen, the magic of relationship. Yeah.
Some people, when they are not feeling well, okay, some people would like to be helped, loving, but some people who are dying or whatever, so to speak, but they do not want people to go and visit them and things like that. So what is your take on that? What should we do?
Yeah, so if we have a relationship and understanding, the behavior is not, we can't tell the mind by just reading the behavior unless you really know the person. Some people really like to be alone, especially when they are vulnerable or they're dying. They like to be quiet. Even if they are stressed, there's no need. Some people work without someone telling them how to do counseling on them, you know. Some people, let me be and just manage my own stress. I have done this before. I know how to manage. And so we give them space. But some people, you will need to be there to be a listening ear. So generally, there are some emotional needs. People like to feel needed, like to have some way to control. That means like to have a power to choose. People also generally like to express their emotion freely, including crying. Okay, don't go and stop them from crying. Music helps because it helps them to express their emotion freely. And people like to have their self-esteem boosted, to have to be praised or to be said like you've done well, you know. And people need love and to have something to love. So you just need to know generally they need this. Then you go by whatever the wisdom tell you to do or not to do. There's no fixed formula. It depends on that person and your relationship with the person. But the principles of the emotional needs is there.